Hi, and welcome to Wednesday. We're glad you've joined us for this 9 at 9. Hey, we're halfway through another week, and we're closer to the end of COVID. Maybe. Sort of. The experts think. Who knows? But we're getting through it. I'm glad that you're part of us. I hope you and your family are healthy and adjusting well to all the different stresses that we're facing this summer. Now, we've been talking about how Paul is instructing Timothy to take the gospel that Paul entrusted to Timothy, and Timothy is now to entrust that to other people. But for Timothy to do that, Timothy had to know his own story. One of the things that we overlook as Christians is remembering and celebrating and being willing to tell our own story. Sometimes we think, well, there's nothing exciting about my story. You know, I had that issue for a long time because, well, there's nothing exciting about my story. I wasn't saved while I was in prison. I wasn't on a heavy metal band. I didn't rebel against my parents. I grew up in a very loving, fun Christian home. We had a lot of fun together. I was taken to church every time the doors were open. My faith became very real to me at a very early age. I have never had a crisis of faith. That means that I've never been in a place where I didn't think God existed or I didn't think Jesus was real. I've always known that. Don't ask me how, I just know. Now, I've had lots of crises of obedience, but, you know, that's not the kind of story that will pack the pews on revival night. You got to have a little more dramatic story, but it's my story. It's the way I grew up. It's what I know. It's what I know of Jesus in my own life. So sometimes we think it's not exciting enough. Other times we're embarrassed. We think, but wow, if people knew that I did this or if I made that mistake, then what would they think of me now? So we don't tell our story. The other reason we don't is it hurts. We don't want to remember it. We don't want to go back and face that pain again. And that's not the reason we want you to do that. But we do want you to remember what it was like to be lost. Being lost is one of the most frightening things in the world. Do you know there are people who literally die from being lost? Every year we lose people on the Appalachia Trail. People who are trying to walk a very well-marked trail will get off the trail for some reason. And they won't be that far off the trail, sometimes no more than 50 yards, 75 yards, not that far at all. And they will become disoriented, lost, and they'll die because no one will find them and they can't get back to the trail. Now, that happens every year. We don't want to remember what it was like to be in that panic of one, not knowing where you are, not knowing how to get back, not knowing if you're going to make it or not, and then being rescued by Jesus. That is a hard moment. But if you forget that feeling, if you forget that reality, then you forget that point of communication, that point of contact with somebody who's lost. It's the point of the AA meeting, the Alcoholics Anonymous, where you sit with a group of other alcoholics and you say to them, hey, I have this problem, and everybody in the room says, us too. We're all dealing with it. There's something that makes you community in that moment of I know what you're going through, or understanding that you know what I'm going through, and I don't have to explain everything to you. So one of the reasons we want you to know your own stories, we want you to remember what it was like to be lost. We want you to remember what it was like to be saved, to be rescued by Jesus wherever you were, however it happened that Jesus found you. And we want you to be able to tell people in concrete, very real ways how it makes a difference. Did it make a difference in the kind of husband you were? Did it make a difference in the kind of boss or employee you were? Did it make a difference in the kind of friend you are? What kind of concrete difference did it make? We want you to be able to share that in 3 to 5 minutes. It's what salesmen call the elevator speech. It's that speech you have from one floor to the next to be able to tell somebody about your product. So you ought to have a 1 to 2 minute testimony. Yes, I'm a Christ believer, and here's the difference it makes. Yes, I understand where you are. I know what it is to be confused and lost, but here's the difference Jesus made. You ought to be able to do it in 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes if they'll give you that. but be able to know your own story, recall it, so you can create a point of contact with a person who is as lost as we once were. Do you remember that moment? Changed your life, didn't it? I'm going to give you about 60 seconds to remember it, and I'll see you tomorrow.